Hey, I wonder, have you ever been in a situation where someone was talking about you or maybe talking to you and you just felt totally judged? Like a situation where they jumped to a conclusion of, well, I know why you did this because da 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 da. And their whole assumption was that you were some mean, evil, bitter person, and actually you had a good reason for what you were doing. It doesn't feel good to be judged, does it? Well, in this upside down kingdom sermon that Jesus preaches here in Luke chapter 6, known as the Beatitudes, he says this in verse 37. Do not judge others, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn others, or it will come back against you. Forgive others, and you will be forgiven. So, very interesting. I mean, some of these are phrases that kind of echo other things Jesus said. Actually, in the Lord's Prayer is the phrase, and forgive us our sins or trespasses as we forgive those who sinned against us. So Jesus does talk more than once about this sort of reciprocity, reciprocal relationship with how we treat others. Now, I want to tomorrow dig in a little deeper on that front phrase, do not judge others, and you will not be judged. I've met some Christians who misunderstand this and think it means that within the church, a Christian could be living in open, ongoing, unrepentant sin, blatant, willful sin that they're advertising, and the rest of the church can't say anything because, Jesus said don't judge others. That's not actually what Jesus means here. In fact, tomorrow I'll show you another Bible passage that says when it comes to people within the church and sin, now not their motives or their taste in music or their breath or their hair color, but sin, if you see obvious sin and you see another believer who's not repenting of it, maybe they don't know it's a sin, we have a responsibility as believers to judge within the church and lead other believers toward holiness. So I'll explain that tomorrow. If that's true within the church, then what does Jesus mean here in verse 37 when he says, do not judge others and you will not be judged? Well, notice there are two phrases there. If you don't judge others, you won't be judged. And notice there are three statements here that all have this duality. If you don't judge others, you won't be judged. And then second one, if you don't condemn others, it won't come back against you. And then if you forgive others, you will be forgiven. Jesus is talking here about our human relationships. And primarily, the do not judge others is this idea of having a critical spirit. And you know these people, right? It's the people who the whole drive home from Sunday sermon, all they can talk about is everything that was wrong or everyone who offended them or how loud the music was. And what Jesus is saying here essentially is if you treat people that way, expect them to treat you that way. It's almost like a wisdom literature proverb kind of thing. Do not judge others. Now, tomorrow we'll get into specifically judging about sin, which is different than what Jesus is talking about here. And we're going to find where God says essentially people outside the church, we're not to judge them. God will judge them at the end of their lives. People inside the church, we're absolutely supposed to judge one another in a loving way that leads toward holiness. I'll show you that verse tomorrow. See you then.